Welcome back, Walter Football Odd Shopper, the two of us together. Well, that's Walt, I'm Eitan, so technically the two of us, but the two entities continue as Walter is back with 5 more plays to look at. Look, can't go undefeated every week, but you finish up, and that's what's most important, my friend. So we ask everybody, hit the thumbs up, subscribe here. We'll tell you all about what's happening at walterfootball.com, especially as mock drafts continue to get updated. Some really good money-making opportunities, but 5 picks to jump into this week, and we always look to go perfect, right? This doesn't always happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have losses sometimes. Just lost my first bowl game against the spread. So you're going to have some losses, and it's just frustrating sometimes because, when you know you have the right side, like in that Eagles-Cowboys game, when it was a 3-point game with 2 minutes left, you're like, okay, we're going to cover. And then in the back of my head, I'm like, all they need to do is not fumble. And then like a second later, Miles Sanders fumbles. The Cowboys kick the field goal and win by 6, and the line's 5.5. But, we can bounce back, and it's still 3 in 2 weeks. So let's bounce back to 5-0 again.
Absolutely. And that's the most important part is we finish up. All right. So that's the beauty of what you're doing here is if you don't go 5-0, we're still going to finish up. But look, 5 more opportunities to nail it. Let's begin with the Cardinals-Falcons game.
Yeah, so I was waiting on news here, and I was happy to get it before the show. I was waiting on news for Colt McCoy. He practiced fully on Wednesday, so that was a good sign. I wanted him to play and not Trace McSorley, so I wanted to bet Arizona plus 3.5 against the Falcons. This is actually like a step down in competition for Colt McCoy. In 3 of his 4 games that he played this year, he's gone against the 49ers, the Patriots, and the Broncos. Like, those are 3 of the better defenses in the NFL. Now he gets the Atlanta, which is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And the Cardinals have they have good talent, like on offense. DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Brown, James Conner, even Greg Dortch is going nuts last game. So McCoy, I feel like he can have a nice game here against an Atlanta pass defense, which is just terrible. And Atlanta overall is terrible. The last time they lost by more than 3 points was won by more than 3 points. It was week 6 against San Francisco. And that was a game where the 49ers were missing half their starters. Like Nick Bosa was out, Trent Williams was out, like George Kittle, like all their guys were out in that game. And that's why Atlanta won. And ever since then, they've covered the spread once. Remember they started 6-0 against the spread. I think they're like 1-5-2 or 1-6-2 against the spread since. So Atlanta is just terrible. I don't know what they're doing, favored by more than 3. Arizona plus 3.5 seems like a gift. And I think we have motivation on our side with Arizona. Like, first of all, J.J. Watt announced that he's going to be retiring. So I think the players around him are going to play hard. And then Atlanta, they were just eliminated from the playoffs last week. So, like, what do they have to play for? I just don't see it. So Arizona plus 3.5 are getting good value, by the way. The line has dropped to 3. So I like it a lot.
Not much that anybody else could add on that one. So let's keep it moving to Detroit, Chicago here. An interesting one with the Lions still alive, Walter.
Yeah, it really saddens me to make this pick because I've been on Detroit all year. I actually bet them to win the Super Bowl back in July at like 165 to 1 odds. And I just thought like this team was going to make the playoffs. I thought in all likelihood, and to get a 165 to 1 team in the playoffs was good value. But I think the wheels are starting to come off for the Lions. Look at the past 2 games. They were just gashed by the Panthers. It was so ugly last week. The week before, they beat the Jets, but they needed a block punt to get there. They were outgained in yards per play against the Jets. Zach Wilson, by the way, is playing against them. So the past 2 weeks, they really haven't been that impressive. And they beat Chicago earlier in the year in Chicago, but they were outgained in that game, 408 to 323. Chicago averaged 1.5 more yards per play. It was a 31-30 game. And so I don't see why the Lions would suddenly beat Chicago by more than 6 points. It just seems like the Lions are not that good of a team to surrender all these key numbers. Like the only key number you're not getting if you bet the Lions is 7. Or Chicago rather. So I just think that the spread doesn't make sense. And,
Welcome to Stokastic's On the Contrary, sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. On the Contrary is produced by Mike Lawrence. You can find him on Twitter at AwesomeYo. I'm joined as usual by DFS GOAT Alex Baker. You can find him on Twitter at AwesomeODFS. And we have a special guest today, one of the best tilters in the DFS space, DK. You can find DK on Twitter at DK__DFS. And this show, as I said, is sponsored by PrizePicks, which offers daily prop-based contests. While you're coming in, please remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. Don't forget to sign up for the Stokastic Hall of Fame as well by changing your avatar on DraftKings and FanDuel. Download the Stokastic avatar from stokastic.com/avatar. Place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 contestants. Tweet the wins to @Stokastic HOF account if you have Twitter, or email us with your screenshot. And of course, you'll win a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. You'll also get a shout out in our weekly Hall of Fame segment. Okay, DK, going to you first. Do you want to show us your shirt?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys can see, but I got my Alex Caruso shirt. Got to ask Alex Baker, why have we never seen Alex Caruso and Alex Baker at the same place in the same time? I don't know, man. I don't know.
Good question, Alex. Do you have an answer there?
No comment. I prefer not to talk about that.
All right, DK, was it hard for you to get away from all of your Twitter tilting to come and make time for us on this show?
Yeah, it was tough to squeeze you guys in, but if you guys don't know, I'm kind of that crazy guy that will tilt on Twitter, but excited to do a show with you guys. Been watching you for a while, so really excited to be on.
Yeah, we're happy to have you on. Yeah, you and Jesse go back and forth with the tilting. It's really, really elite in that category. Alex, we haven't done this show in a few weeks, and you've done a couple, maybe just one. How many live finals have you been to in the past 3 weeks, Alex?
I went to the 3 live finals, the King of the Beach, FanDuel, and then DraftKings finals. So it's been a wild week, but I'm excited to be at home for this coming week. So that'll be a little bit easier.
Nice to be home. Yeah, I know you didn't win any of them because I think I would know if you did. But did you do well in any of them, or did you just enjoy your vacations?
No, I did not do well. I was like in the middle of the pack for all 3. I think nothing too exciting, but it was enjoyable going out and meeting all the guys at the tournaments. It's always fun because there's a lot of cool guys that play DFS, and it's kind of making it there. It's kind of like showing that you got what it takes to make it big. So it was a fun month here.
For sure. Always a good time. All right. Well, let's jump into this slate a little bit. And Alex, I'll just ask you, I always ask you at the beginning of the show, do you have any general thoughts on this slate that differ from any other NFL slate? Is this slate unique to you in any way?
I haven't gotten to look at it quite in as much detail yet as I'd want to really judge, but by the end of the show, I hope to have a good answer for that one.
Okay. And DK, if you have anything to add there, do you have any thoughts about this slate where it differs from any other NFL slate? And of course, it's fine if you don't.
Yeah, well, it's not the weather slate that it was last week or 2 weeks ago. But it's one of those where it's winding down and there's some teams that aren't playing for anything. So question is, do some of those like main players maybe not see full allotment of snaps, or like some teams that aren't playing for much? So I think that's the only tricky part about these last couple of weeks of the season is the teams that have really no motive to play for.
Yeah, that is a really tricky thing with this guy. I mean, we already saw it last night. Like the Thursday night football game, we knew the Titans were resting Derrick Henry, and we had to ask ourselves, like, are they going to play Robert Woods the full game? Are they going to play Treylon Burks the full game? And I believe they did. I think they played full snap counts. I guess I haven't gone back and checked, but it seemed to me that they were still involved late in the fourth quarter. So they played their guys the whole game. But yeah, we've got to ask ourselves, the Jaguars, some of these teams, really the motivation isn't really there to play full game. So definitely interesting from that perspective. All right, let's go on. Let's talk a little bit about the quarterback position. We'll start there. And of course, Alex, what we do here. We're going to go position by position, and I'm going to ask you if there are any chalky players that you're willing to eat the chalk, if there's any chalk that you're going to be fading, and then, of course, we'll get into contrarian plays. But Alex, I'll start with you. Looking at the chalkier players at quarterback, any chalk that you're willing to eat or major fades for you?
One kind of surprising name that's standing out here is Brock Purdy as being a good play at quarterback. He's only 5,500. He's been fairly confident so far, and they have a team total of 26 versus Las Vegas, whose defense, not great. So that's one name that I wasn't expecting coming into this week that I'd be interested in, but he's kind of popping off in our boom bust tool. So
okay, so you're jumping right to the contrarian play. I guess
well,
I mean the question doesn't really apply.
He's 5% owned.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's super contrarian, but
yeah, but looking at our top owned quarterbacks, the highest we have is Jared Goff at 12%. Then we jump down from there right to Justin Fields at 8.3%. So the question doesn't really work that well for this particular slate because really there is no chalk. So yeah, Brock Purdy, I say contrarian because he's 5%, but he's also like ninth in terms of projected ownership for us. So not really contrarian either. But definitely stands out as a great play on this slate. Anybody you see up there that is getting some ownership that you think you're not willing to go there, Alex?
Well, Justin Fields is always he's a tough one because you really don't get excited about stacking him up. He's 8% projected owned, but we have him as 5.5% chance of being optimal. So from a points per dollar standpoint, he's not bad, but he's coming in a little bit higher on than he should be. And I always don't have a problem fading a guy that doesn't pass much because that makes it harder to get the rest of your lineup right.
Yep, makes sense. DK, then I'll ask you the same question. So of course we don't have anybody that's all that highly owned, but among quarterbacks that are that you're projecting for 5+% ownership, any chalk that you're willing to eat or any major fades up there?
Yeah, so I mean, I get why Jared Goff right now is projected to be the highest owned quarterback on the slate, right? You got a high over-under there, but I think he is one where I would be willing to hop off, maybe look elsewhere. I think there's other guys in that range that, have a similar ceiling coming in with much less ownership. So while I do agree Jared Goff is a good point per dollar play, I think he's someone that I would be willing to fade if he in fact is going to be the highest owned quarterback.
Yeah, and currently we have him the highest owned by like 4%. So yeah, it does seem like he's really the only quarterback that you could even call sort of chalky at 12%. I mean, Justin Fields, 8.3%, not all that chalky. Anybody that you like up there in terms of ownership? Justin Fields, Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, any of these guys stand out to you as somebody that you are willing to? Patrick Mahomes is in there as well.
Yeah, so I think Justin Fields, I know, just because his ceiling, really the guy that brings it with his rushing upside, he can go for like 100 plus yards in the ground any single game. So playing in the dome, he is someone that I'd be willing to eat the chalk on. And so I like some Fields.
Yeah, I think I have more interest in Fields than Alex does. Also, although I understand Alex's point, and I've kind of come around more to Alex's thinking of not playing quarterbacks where you can't correlate them or you can't expect much upside with the correlation. But man, Fields against the Lions still is somebody that I'm a little bit interested in. Hard for me to not want to play some Fields against the Lions when he's not getting much ownership. Of course, I guess the ownership has come up a little bit, up to over 8% now. I think it was like 3 or 4% when I first did a show on Wednesday. So not quite as contrarian as I was hoping he would be. Alex, I'll go back to you with the truer contrarian options. Anybody below Brock Purdy's 5.3% projected ownership that you're wanting to play this week?
Let's see. Desmond Ridder, he supposedly has some upside running the ball, and he's dirt cheap. They're facing Arizona this week, so a matchup that not particularly difficult. And Ridder, he's only had an average of 8.6 fantasy points in his first 2 starts, but when you actually look at the numbers, last week Atlanta passed more than they had in all but one game this season it was the highest pass rate at like neutral game scripts of the season with Ridder under center. So I think everyone's going to think he stinks, but the team total is 23. He has rushing upside, and they may pass more than you expect. So I feel like he could come out of nowhere to shock everyone.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. Relatively low owned. Seems like a game environment that should be a place where people are scoring fantasy points. And of course, then we feel like there might not be any that many very great options in that game. But yeah, definitely Ritter is going to be an interesting one. DK, how about you? Anybody who's getting kind of low ownership at quarterback that you think you're willing to play this week?
Yeah, so this one's really, really gross. He ruined Christmas for me. He was the Grinch, but Russell Wilson, 1%. I mean, he was awful, like completely awful. But, if you go back a couple weeks ago, he did have probably his best game of the season against the Chiefs, going for 26 fantasy points. And, does have a little bit of rushing upside. You have a couple guys who can pair him with, obviously, with Judy and with Courtland Sutton. So I just think no one's going to be on him, and it should be good game script, right? They're huge underdogs here. So I think Russell Wilson as a contrarian play is someone I do have my eye on.
Yeah, and he in that game where he finally did go off against the Chiefs, I was glad because I was very much on him, and both of the guests, I think Alex was out that week, but both Steve Buzzard and Brian Hooper, I believe, were the guests, were on Russell Wilson that week. So it was fun to see him break out when we were all hoping for it. But then also in that game, he got hurt like when they were in the red zone. I think he was concussed when they were like right about to score a touchdown, and then Ripien, I believe, came in and scored the touchdown instead. So he could have had an even bigger game that week. Of course, that's not predictive what happened the last time these teams played each other. But if he's going to be 1% owned, yeah, I agree. That's definitely an interesting contrarian option. DK, any other contrarian quarterbacks that you wanted to call out here? And you don't need to if you don't have anybody in mind.
Yeah, well, we're still waiting on the Eagles with Jalen Hurts. Like, we don't really know if he's for sure in yet. So he's projected at pretty low ownership. I don't think that will hold if he ends up, getting confirmed the starter. But right now, looking at like 2%. So he's someone where if he does play and that ownership holds, I would definitely be all over that. But I think his ownership would go up if he gets confirmed in.
Yeah, I think I would probably expect that as well, because we don't have that many like elite spots here. And that would, anytime you can play Jalen Hurts at relatively low ownership, I would guess that is going to come up at least a little bit as well. Alex, how about you? Any other contrarian quarterbacks that you want to throw out there?
Let's see here. Mac Jones is always someone intriguing, but let's see. Carson Wentz starting for Commanders. They have some decent talent at receiver. So with McLaurin and Curtis Samuel, although Samuel looks like he hasn't been projecting as well recently, but a reasonable play. They have a team total of 21. So everything looks pretty, average for Wentz, which is good enough when his ownership's coming in at 2%. So that would be kind of a sleeper I'd look at.
Okay. Yep. Makes sense. All right. Well, then let's move on from quarterbacks. We'll talk about running backs. But first, let me tell you, we have a great offer for new users only. You can get full access to everything Stokastic has to offer for NHL for 3 days free. Projections, ownership, 1v1 tools, lineup generator, top stacks tool, zero risk because it's all free. So sign up now. The link is in the description of this video. Note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and is not included in this offer. All right, let's talk some running backs. Alex, I'll go to you first. Looking at the high end in terms of ownership of running backs, who do you like that is getting a little bit of chalk you're willing to eat, and then any major fades for you among the higher owned running backs?
Yeah, just one note that I noticed while we were doing this show is I don't know if you saw, FanDuel doesn't have the Los Angeles Chargers versus Los Angeles Rams game on the slate. So no Akers on there because he's been kind of on a hot streak here. But okay, so chalk I'd be willing to eat. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, depending on if Harris is out, he's a workhorse potentially. And Christian McCaffrey last week, he kind of bombed because Tyrion Davis-Price ended up playing a little bit more than people anticipated, but McCaffrey still got 60% of the running back carries, and he ran routes on 78% of plays. So I'm hoping people will take the wrong lesson from that game he's not going to be as much of a workhorse back as people were hoping and fade him, but the matchup versus Vegas is pretty amazing, and they're starting Stidham. So I feel like you could get some short fields there.
Yeah, for sure. Christian McCaffrey at 9,000. Yeah, maybe will not quite play him as much of the show. We do still have him at 27% ownership, so obviously a little bit chalky, but yeah, looks pretty phenomenal. DK, I'll go to you. Looking at these higher owned running backs, any chalk that you're willing to eat or major fades for you among the higher projected ownership among running backs?
Yeah, so I want to see the status of Damian Harris, because right now we got Ramondre, the second highest owned running back on the slate. So if Damian Harris plays, I think that would be chalk I'd be willing to fade. Stevenson and Harris would most likely split in that situation. Obviously, Stevenson would probably still get more of the passing down work, but if he in fact is going to be the second highest owned running back, if Damian Harris is in, I'll be willing to get away with fading him. And then you guys mentioned McCaffrey. Like, that's chalk I'm totally fine eating. I know he's picking up a lot of ownership right now, but bell cow back, decent spot here, really good matchup, and super involved in the passing game. So I think the Damian Harris news is going to be pretty important for me for Ramondre.
Yeah, definitely. You, at least theoretically, he should cut into Ramondre Stevenson's workload. Of course, Stevenson has had such a great year that it seems like he's taken on more and more of the workload. But you never know. Harris has been out for a while and could certainly eat into that. What about? I'll stick with you, DK. Just looking at the kind of lower owned, any contrarian running backs that you're interested in playing this week?
This one is pretty risky, but we got Khalil Herbert at the Flatman price, $4,000. Now, it was his first game back. You did see Montgomery outstep Khalil Herbert, but we saw before Khalil Herbert went down, the Bears said they're going to go the hot hand, with those two. And obviously, like I said, highest over under of the slate. If he in fact is going to be 1%, I think I'd be willing to take a shot in Khalil Herbert. Also, decent pass catcher too. So I think they kind of eased him back into it in his first game, but I could see him taking on more of a workload for this week.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Get there before the field does, before we've really seen him take on that workload when he is 4,000 against this Lions defense. I can see that. I hadn't thought about it, but that seems like a play that I could see trying to get ahead of the field there and hope that he, gets closer to even carries. And of course, with close to even carries with a running back as talented as Khalil Herbert, that could be enough. He seemed to be earlier in the season, he seemed to be taking on more of that workload from David Montgomery before he got hurt. And then now Montgomery has been kind of a workhorse, but yeah, definitely an interesting one there. Alex, how about you? Any contrarian running backs that you are one in play this week?
Looks like Aaron Jones. It's tricky because some of these questionable players are a little bit down in the ownership projections right now, but if they're in, they may come up. So let's see. No one's really jumping out. I guess one that stands out is Zach Moss. Now, I think people expected a split between Deion Jackson and Zach Moss last week for the Colts. But what actually ended up happening is Zach Moss got 86% of the carries, while Deion Jackson got 0 carries. So I think it was Jordan Wilkins and Deion Jackson kind of splitting the rest of the work, but Zach Moss got the majority of the Colts share. So I think that if people aren't on him, I think that he's going to be a pretty awesome play, and they're facing the Giants. So, not a great matchup, but with the price and ownership, I think you can play Zach Moss.
Did you hear the rumors about Deion Jackson and why he didn't play last week?
No,
there were rumors. So we right after the game started, so it was an island game. Right after the game starts, it comes out that Deion Jackson had gotten into a screaming match with one of the coaches and was maybe being punished. Of course, he still played some, so I don't know if there's really any validity to that or if it factored in at all. But I thought that was interesting, and kind of a bummer that we got that news after the games had started, and then of course we see him not really out there. Zach Moss leading the way again. But yeah, the Zach Moss facing Giants defense that is 31st in terms of rush DVOA, 23rd in terms of pass DVOA seems like it should be a great spot. Of course, the Colts still have a relatively low implied team total. I haven't updated this since Wednesday, but it was 16.5, probably somewhere right around there. So not a huge implied total, but still looking like a good spot. Any other contrarian running backs, Alex, that you wanted to talk about, or anybody? I guess I'll ask. With the uncertainty surrounding what teams are going to do, and I guess this isn't even necessarily related to that, but James Conner has been not practicing or limited in practice. Do you think are there any running backs that could potentially benefit, like Keontae Ingram? Is he somebody that you'd be interested in playing if James Conner can't play against the Falcons in kind of a sweet spot at, I would assume, relatively low salary? I haven't actually looked at what his salary is, but anybody like Keontae Ingram that you might have interest in, depending on how things go as far as teams with availability of running backs.
Yeah, I mean, Keontae Ingram would be a pretty good play, I'd have to imagine. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Cole McCoy is someone that checks down a lot, so I think you could see some big numbers. As far as other guys, like pretty much every running back, if they're ruled out, that's going to make a huge difference for, good value. So,
Sure.
I haven't looked at the prices on Green Bay, but I think Aaron Jones was pretty.
Jones at 7,100, Dillon at 5,800 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think if Jones misses, Dillon's going to be a really good play. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be low owned at all. He'll probably be the super chalk, but kind of warranted.
Would you consider playing Dillon if Jones is active? Because we just saw the last game, Jones was active, but he didn't play all that much because it came out later, he was nursing an injury. So, there's maybe at least some chance that he's active, but not really fully involved. Do you think you'd have any interest in Dillon at all against this Vikings defense if Jones is not inactive?
Let's see. I think that definitely makes it murkier and not great value. So I wouldn't say I don't have any interest, but his price is pretty high if he does have that RB2 role on the team. Of course, it's like a little bit of a roll of the dice because he could play more than you think, but I would prefer to bet on a little bit safer options.
Okay. DK, let me throw one at you. So we saw the last game, the Broncos defense looked like they were wholly uninterested in playing against the Rams. Now they're facing the Chiefs. Would you have any interest in playing either of Isaiah Pacheco or Jerick McKinnon against this Broncos defense?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up because I just wanted to mention it for last week. Jerick McKinnon really, really tilted me. I don't know about you guys, but I thought he was one of the worst chalk plays of the year. And he scores a touchdown on 8 snaps or 8 touches. And so that just really tilted me. But now if you look at the ownership, neither are picking up much. So, I mean, not a lot has changed from last week to this week with McKinnon, and he was massive chalk last week. So if no one's going to play him this week, I think he is someone that is at least interesting, obviously more involved in the passing game. But yeah, Pacheco would be more the early down back, and you would think he gets more opportunities in a game like this with the Chiefs playing from ahead. So I think both Chiefs backs makes for decent GPP plays, but yeah, the McKinnon last week, I'm still on full tilt mode from that.
I think it was so last week he was fine, right? I think it was 2 weeks ago that he went off. He was 33% owned and scored a couple touchdowns. If I'm remembering, I might be misremembering what it was. I think it was but then I think last week he maybe scored a touchdown but didn't do much else. So I've been cheering for Jerick McKinnon because he was one of my heavier players in best ball. So I've just been naturally cheering for him and glad that he's been doing well. But from a DFS perspective, yeah, certainly tilting that the RB2 is just getting every touchdown for the Chiefs. I understand the tilt there. All right, we got one more question in chat, and I'll keep it with you, DK. So Antonio Gibson looking like he's questionable to play. Would you have any interest in Brian Robinson if Antonio Gibson can't go?
Yeah, so I think Brian Robinson would be a pretty solid play there. It's not like he's expensive. He's only 5.2 and decent spot there. You would think his workload does go up. So we got to keep an eye on the Antonio Gibson news, but I think Robinson would look a lot better if Gibson's out. And then you probably would get Jonathan Williams as the backup running back. I would expect him to be more involved in the passing game, but I do think Robinson would get more opportunities and would look better if Gibson is in fact out. Yeah,
it would make sense for him to get more opportunities with, a lesser RB2 behind him. Brown's 30th against the rush in terms of DVOA per Football Outsider. So pretty good spot. Yeah, I think that makes some sense. Any other DK, any other running backs that you wanted to bring up here? Can we move on to wide receivers?
I think that's it for me.
Okay. And Alex, I'll just throw it back to you one more time. Anybody else that you wanted to throw in there?
No, let's I mean, Jamal Williams could be interesting if he plays, but another questionable guy. We'll see.
Okay. Well, then we can move on and talk some wide receivers. But first, let me tell you about our sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks offers daily prop-based contests. There are no sharks, optimizers, or mass entries on PrizePicks. You just make a 5-player lineup. You can net up to 10x your entry fee. Use your knowledge of multiple sports with cross-sport entries. Now's a great time to do so with NFL, NHL, NBA, all the major sports going on at once. Not all, I guess, no MLB, but most of the major sports are available right now. So you can use your knowledge of multiple sports on PrizePicks. Click the link in the description below to get 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to $100 deposit match bonus when you sign up and make a deposit with PrizePicks. Alex, usually when we do this PrizePicks segment, I just want to touch on if we have any PrizePicks props that stand out to you. Do you have any in mind, or should I pull up the PrizePicks app and find one and ask you if you like it?
Yeah, I think a few are coming to mind here. One, I kind of like it over on Zach Moss. Like what you mentioned about Deion Jackson is kind of interesting, but it's like the coaching staff's totally different. Or I mean, it's a different head coach than when Deion Jackson was a big player earlier in the season. And it's like if he's screaming at the coaches, they're probably just not going to like him still this week, like just like they didn't last week. So I kind of like it over on Zach Moss. And then I'll come up with the under as well. It's say Tom Brady. Like they're playing Carolina, so it's very possible that Tampa runs more in this game if they get up to a lead. But they just haven't been good at throwing this season. Like Brady, the Bucks, just let me pull up their stats real quick, but he's averaged 278 yards a game, but it's on 6.2 yards per pass. So if you just multiply that by the number of passes that you'd expect in a normal game, that's going to come in well under. Okay.
DK, let me throw a number at you. And I don't know if you do projections or anything like that, but we've got Justin Jefferson at 95.5 receiving yards going up against the Packers defense that has been talking shit this week. Jair Alexander coming out and saying week 1 when he got toasted by Jefferson was a fluke. That probably doesn't factor in too much, but 95.5 receiving yards for Justin Jefferson. Do you have an instinct there, over or under, DK?
Yeah, I mean, that's a high number, but I think if I had to lean one way, it probably would be the over. Just because, again, that is Justin Jefferson. I don't care like who's matched up against him. Like it's Justin Jefferson. I think he's probably the best wide receiver in the league. So Minnesota loves giving him the ball, probably double-digit targets as well. So and that is, I think, the second highest total of the week. So yeah, I think if I had to pick one, it would be the over.
I like it. Yeah, me too. And I agree. He's probably the best receiver in the league. Skull. All right, Alex, did you find any others that you like here, or should we move on?
I mean, I could talk about bets I like all day, but I'll give another one here. Let's go with Latavius Murray under. It's like Denver. His workload is split 3 ways between him, Marlon Mack, and Chase Edmonds. And last week he only rushed 40% of the carries. They did get absolutely annihilated in that game. So I guess it could have just been he got pulled due to the team being down. But I just think that Denver they're not good, and they're probably not gonna be ahead in this game. So
I feel like they just signed a running back too.
They just signed Tyler Batty.
Oh yeah.
I think he was on the Ravens previously, but
yep,
you wouldn't expect him to make an impact immediately.
Tyler Batty will never not be funny to me because I'm in a keeper league where one of the guys, I had not heard of him. I did best ball drafts all summer, never heard of this Tyler Batty guy. And a guy in my keeper league took him with his first pick in this keeper league draft. And I was like, I have no idea who this guy is. And then of course it did not pan out. But so I'll always think that Tyler Batty is kind of funny. All right, let's move on and talk some wide receivers. Alex, I'll stick with you looking at the high end of ownership. Any chalk that you're willing to eat? Any major fades for you?
Well, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's very, very popular this week, and they have a good matchup in the Dome versus Chicago. So Detroit's team total is 29. It's like, I feel like that's the highest since I started watching football that Detroit's ever been projected for. But maybe during the Stafford and Calvin Johnson days, they're higher. But I think there's no real threat to his targets any week. So I think he's always a tough fade.
Yeah, definitely. So you like Amon-Ra St. Brown? Anybody that you do want to fade among the wide receivers that are getting over like 10% ownership? We've only got 6 options there, so not a lot to choose from, but anybody that you're looking to get under the field?
No one in particular. It's also tough because there's guys like Allen Lazard who, if Watson ends up playing, his ownership probably goes down, but Justin Jefferson could be a fade. It's not anything about his talent. I mean, he's the second highest projected wide receiver for us, but it's just the price is very high, and this isn't a slate where it's easy to fit him in. So I don't mind just being a little bit under on the field, because Minnesota only has a team total of 22 this week. So there's just not a lot of production to go around.
Okay. Yep. Makes sense to me. And DK, I'll go to you. So we only have, in these Stokastic ownership projections, we only have 6 guys getting over 10% of ownership. Looking at those guys in particular, I mean, if you see anybody that you want to talk about who's a little bit under that number, DK, but we've got Amon-Ra St. Brown at 22.6%, Garrett Wilson 17.7%, Keenan Allen 15.5%, Justin Jefferson 14.9%, Jacoby Myers 12.9%, and Allen Lazard 12.8% projected ownership. Any of those guys that you're thinking you're going to be eating the chalk, and any fades for you?
Yeah, so Alex mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm totally fine eating that chalk. 7,800, just double-digit targets every single week, playing in the Dome. So he looks good. Also, Garrett Wilson, he's projected for a lot of ownership, but hey, he doesn't get to play with Zach Wilson, right? That's a big positive. So I think he's also chalk. I'm fine eating. I think Jacoby Myers the ownership feels a little bit high. We're waiting on the status of Devontae Parker as well. Obviously, he is the number 1 wide receiver there for the Patriots, but I think there's some other options we could get to for New England for less ownership that are a lot cheaper. So I think, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, totally fine eating that chalk. I think Jacoby Myers ownership feels a little bit high.
Well, let's transition that then into the contrarian options, starting with those New England receivers that you do have interest in, DK. Who are you going to be playing, if not Jacoby Myers of New England receivers?
Yeah, so kind of dependent, like I said, on Devontae Parker, but someone that's, I think, kind of sneaky. He didn't do much last week, but rookie Tyquan Thornton, he's a flat min price. He saw almost 100% of the snaps last week, and if there's no Parker, I expect that to be similar. Like, I expect him to play majority of the game. We saw his one big breakout week 6 against Cleveland. We're going for 21 fantasy points. So I think it's a situation where I might be trying to buy low on him. So if you need salary relief, I think Thornton looks pretty good as a contrarian play.
Yeah, and he looks great in the boom bust tool as well. He's just 3,000. We've got him projected for 1.1% ownership with a 4% chance of being optimal. So he looks like a pretty great leverage play in our tools as well. DK, I'll stick with you though. So outside of not just limiting you to those New England guys, anybody else you want to talk about among contrarian wide receiver options?
Yeah, so I think some of the Rams wide receivers look pretty good. Tutu right now picking up the most ownership, but a game that they should be playing from behind here. Chargers usually play down to their competition. So, and I don't think we can expect Tyler Higbee to go for like 10 catches again. So I think Van Jefferson at $4,000 looks pretty appealing. He's played a majority of the game now. He's that big play threat and should be good game script too. So he's someone that I do like the ceiling with. And like I said, I don't think we can expect Higbee to have that type of performance again. So some of these Rams wide receivers, I think, are good contrarian plays.
I've seen a lot of chatter about the Detroit Lions wide receivers outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, both Jameson Williams and DJ Chark coming up. DK, I'll stick with you about these Detroit receivers. Do you think you'd have any interest in Jameson Williams or DJ Chark potentially?
Yeah, I don't think I can do Jameson Williams yet. The snaps have just been really disappointing. I think he played 11 snaps last week. So until I see those snaps go up, I just really can't do it. With DJ Chark, I'd be fine with that. He's playing still a majority of the game. He's averaging, 5-6 targets a game, relatively cheap. So I'm fine with DJ Chark. He's gone for double-digit fantasy points down 3 of the last 4 games. But Jameson Williams, I think I can't do it yet.
Yeah, you're right. He only ran 6 routes last week. I did not realize that he really has not taken off in terms of being on the field. He's maxed out over the past 4 weeks at 6 routes run. So yeah, it's a little bit tough to want to get there with Jameson Williams. Alex, I'll go to you now. Looking at the contrarian wide receiver options, anybody that you're interested in playing?
Oh yeah, I mean, Terry McLaurin is kind of interesting. It hasn't done as well with Wentz, but very low owned right now. The other guy I'm looking at here, Drake London, his ownership's a little bit higher than I was actually anticipating, but yeah, he's been pretty good the last 3 weeks. So I guess I can understand how people would get there, but it seems like Atlanta has a good matchup this week, and if people are going to be off of them because of Desmond Ritter, I think there's some value there. Oh, yeah. We never mentioned Tyler Algier at running back, but he's kind of intriguing too.
Yeah, I love that game environment in general. The Atlanta versus Arizona. We've got 2. I mean, I don't know if you call Desmond Ritter the backup quarterback anymore, but 2 not elite quarterbacks. And somebody else in chat brought up DeAndre Hopkins, who's somebody that I've actually been meaning to bring up. I forgot to bring him up on the Wednesday show, but with Colt McCoy back, I mean, we saw I didn't really do anything with Trace McSorley, but DeAndre Hopkins has been kind of a target monster in Colt McCoy games. Alex, do you think you'd have any interest in playing DeAndre Hopkins this week?
Well, yeah, I'm always interested, but the price is very high at 7,700, so the offense has to be halfway decent to pay that off. I think going back to Colt McCoy, that is going to make him look a little bit better. So I don't hate it, but it's not looking amazing.
Do you think James Conner's availability, Alex, would affect your interest in DeAndre Hopkins at all? Like, is he going to look more appealing if James Conner is out?
I don't think so, because Connor, he's only been targeted about 17% of the time this season. So that doesn't seem like it's that much more or less than any other running back. So I don't know how much individually he'll make a difference.
Okay. And then any others that you want to throw out there? Contrarian wide receiver options?
Chris Moore, I think we can go back to the well. Like, he kind of disappointed as a mega chalk a couple of weeks ago, and then last week was even more disappointing, but he's getting the work.
And then I guess the one other spot that we're kind of, or I guess one of the many spots that we're trying to keep an eye on, is this Packer situation with Christian Watson. If Watson is available, do you think you'd play Christian Watson? And if he's not, do you think you'd have any interest in any of these other Packers wide receivers?
Yeah, I mean, his target share has been pretty impressive so far, 23%. So when he started getting the workload of running routes on 90% of plays, Watson became a really good play. So if he's playing again this week, I'd be into it. If he's not, that kind of consolidates the workload between Lazard, Romeo Doubs, and and Randall Cobb. So Cobb hasn't played more than about 2/3 of snaps this season, but Doubs has played that full-time role. So I think Doubs would be a good play.
Okay. And then DK, I'll throw it back to you. If you want to touch on any of the wide receivers we brought up, or any other contrarian wide receivers that you want to talk about.
Yeah, so you brought up DeAndre Hopkins there. I think a couple other interesting plays would be the other wide receivers for Arizona. Hollywood Brown right now not picking up a ton of ownership. They kind of limited his snaps in his first game back, but he's 5,500. You got Colt McCoy back, which is definitely a boost to him. And then Greg Dortch, surprisingly played a lot last week. He's the flat min price. He got targeted a ton. He played 58 to 77 snaps. He was someone, I forget, it was a showdown slate a couple weeks ago. He got a lot of ownership. He ended up not playing. But I think the Cardinals made the right decision playing him over Robbie Anderson and AJ Green. So if he in fact is going to, retain that slot role and play a majority of the game, and he's not going to pick up a ton of ownership against this Atlanta defense, he's definitely someone I have my eye on.
Yeah, Greg Dortch, that was super frustrating. I don't remember if it was this New England game or the Denver. It all kind of runs together because I do a ton of showdown content, and I was very high on Greg Dortch. Like I was like, we are under projecting him. He just steps into that Rondell Moore role. We've seen it. He's just going to be so involved. And then I don't remember which of these games it was, but it doesn't matter because he ran 2 and 3 routes the past 2 weeks against New England and Denver. And then this week, nothing changed as far as I could tell this past week. And he runs 34 routes and of course has 11 targets, 10 receptions in that game against Tampa Bay. So if we can think that he's going to be anywhere close to as involved as he was against Tampa Bay, Greg Dortch definitely going to be very interesting. I like that call out. Hadn't really thought about him, but in an even better game environment too against the Falcons. Yeah, it's definitely pretty interesting. All those guys, some interest. Okay. Anybody else you want to touch on before we move on from wide receiver, DK?
No, I think that's it for me.
Okay, and Alex, how about you?
Nope.
All right. Well, then we can move on. We'll talk about some tight ends and defenses. But first, let me tell you, if PrizePicks isn't available in your state, BetMGM probably is. And we've got a great offer for you. You'll get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and bet at least $10. That's every tool on the site for every sport other than Fantasy Cruncher, a $240 value. All you need to do is click the link in the description or in chat, follow the steps, and deposit $10 or more and place a bet of $10 or more on whatever you want. And when that bet settles, BetMGM will hit you up with how to get your free subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. On top of all that, you also get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That means if you win the bet, you win the bet. If you lose the bet, you still get your $1,000 back in free bets. It's legit free money and a free subscription to the best DFS tools out there. Reminder though, you do need to use the link or we won't be able to track you. All right, let's move on and talk some tight ends and defenses. Alex, I'll go to you first, talking tight ends, looking at the high end of ownership. Any chalk you're willing to eat or major fades?
Well, fades, I suppose. Tyler Higbee stands out as a possible fade because he just performed so well the other night. It'd be kind of surprising if he wasn't highly owned compared to his projection, but we'll see what it comes in at later in the week. And then Evan Ingram's another guy that's been super hot. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back down to earth. So Ingram has been getting a sizable target share, but I just feel like his results still are a little bit unsustainable.
Okay. Alex, we got a super chat from my man Jorge Jacome asking, do you guys think this slate ownership should be more spread as maybe some teams will bench starters? Do you think ownership is going to be more spread out than usual on this slate? I would say based on, the boom bust tool, it looks a little bit more spread out than usual. Do you think that is going to play out, Alex?
Well, I think if there's uncertainty, that kind of makes you spread out your ownership a little bit more. But what ends up happening a lot is there's just fewer good plays for the number of games, but there are 13 games on the slate, 12 on FanDuel for some reason. So I think we should be able to find plenty of players to play, and that's going to be the main factor, is just the number of games.
Yeah, for sure. All right, DK, I will go to you with looking at the high end of tight end, the higher owned guys. Any chalk that you're willing to eat or major fades for you?
Yeah, so Travis Kelce is chalk I'm willing to eat, just because you spend up for him at the tight end position, you're going to have a different build, right? And it's something I talk about a lot with the Chiefs stack. Is it's kind of hard to make that work since tight end's usually a position that a lot of people want to try to spend down on. So I think spending up on Kelce is something I like doing a lot. So he's chalk I'm fine eating. A little bit surprised on the Cole Kmet ownership. Like, I get it. The Bears have no one at wide receiver, but for him to be the third highest owned tight end, that just feels like a little bit too much. So yeah, Kelce, totally fine getting that chalk. I think Cole Kmet feels a little bit too high.
Yeah, I wonder also, you and I both expressed some interest in Justin Fields. Of course, the first place I want to go if I'm starting Justin Fields is pair him with Cole Kmet. He's probably the number one receiving option for the Bears, and you get him at tight end. But I'm guessing that's going to be kind of a chalky thing too with people who want to play Justin Fields. What do you think you're going to do with your Justin Fields lineups, DK?
Yeah, that's a good question because if you're stacking Fields, like you said, the first guy you go to is Cole Kmet. I don't really think I can play one of those wide receivers. So I think for me, if I'm playing Justin Fields, it's either I'm playing him naked or I'm playing with Kmet. So that's a good point. That could be why Kmet is right up there at the top of ownership, is because he's really the only guy I think you can feel good stacking Justin Fields with.
Right. And if you're like me, and I've kind of learned this from Alex, like in general, we want to be stacking, right? Like, yes, you can play Justin Fields naked, but in general, you're taking away a bit of correlation if you do play him naked. So it makes it just a little bit harder to get every player to hit if you don't have some correlation with your quarterback. So then you want to correlate somebody. And then, of course, the first place you want to go is Cole Kmet. So a little bit of a mess there. And I still have some interest, but it's hard to really want to play anybody else from Chicago, which makes that a little bit tough. DK, I'll stick with you. So now we talked a little bit about the chalky guys. Any contrarian tight ends you want to play this week?
Yeah, there's a couple guys I want to mention. So one's kind of dependent on news here. So I've got to keep an eye on the status of Kylan Granson there for the Colts. He wasn't at practice yesterday. So if I had to guess, I would say he doesn't play. And if he's out, I think Jelani Woods at 2.8K looks pretty appealing. He ran the most routes. He ran more routes than Mo Cox. He had 3 catches on 5 targets. So I think Woods as a punt play looks pretty good. I think he's a guy that pretty talented wide receiver, or receiving tight end. So I like some Jelani Woods. And then also this one is kind of gross too, but keep an eye on Greg Dulcich news. If he's out, you saw Eric Sahlberg kind of fill in as that pass catcher. He's the flat min price. So not something you'd feel great about, but he's, like I said, really, really cheap. And I don't even know, is Albert O still on this team? I think he's on the practice squad. So I know the best ball bros are in shambles about that one.
I was just about to ask you, you don't think that Albert O is going to come back and save the best ball bros in week 17, make it the smart pick all along? He's all year has looked like the dumbest pick ever. And now, he's going to come back and save them. I honestly, he's been inactive. So I would guess I don't know. I don't know what they'll do if Greg Dulcich can't play. Maybe he will be active and get, 4 blocking snaps. Who knows? But yeah, Alberto looking like a bust. But yeah, it's interesting. Maybe you can find somebody with Saubert or somebody. Alex, how about you? Contrarian tight ends you want to play this week?
David Njoku is someone that he's been super involved when he's been healthy, and I was encouraged by the recent snap counts where last week he ran routes on 89% of dropbacks. So I think he's a really smart play. And then let's see. I mean, stacking up your tight end is always super reasonable. Daniel Bellinger is another guy that seems like maybe he'll go a little bit under the radar. And usually the tight end is a little bit of a tough one to find some really low on guys. Yep.
And I'm also curious, I mean, it doesn't really fit any of our categories all that well, but right in the mid-range, we've got TJ Hawkinson at 5,400, George Kittle, 5,900, Dallas Goedert, 4,700. Alex, do any of those 3 stand out to you as guys that you're interested in playing this week?
Goddard, I think he's going to be the guy that I'm looking at in that chalk range. He came back last week and he played very high workload at 89% of routes. It really doesn't matter to me a ton whether they start Minshew or Hurts, because I think from a passing standpoint, they're probably going to average around the same amount of yards. But Goddard, I think he didn't really go off, so I think he'll be a little bit under the radar this week.
Okay, and I'll ask you the same thing, DK. Do you have any interest in those kind of mid-end tight ends who are, not the cheapest and not the chalkiest, but also not very contrarian? TJ Hawkinson, George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, any of those guys interest you?
Yeah, I think TJ Hawkinson. He had a big week. Was it last week? Yeah, went for 38 fantasy points, 13 catches and 16 targets. I mean, second highest total game of the week with Minnesota, just condensed target share, right? When they're throwing the ball, where it's going. It's going to Jefferson, it's going to Hawkinson, it's going to Thielen. So he's someone that is in that mid-range. Not a lot of guys in that range, like you said. So you have a relatively unique build. And I think I like the ceiling the most on him. The only downside is, he just had that big week last week. So maybe ownership is a little bit inflated. But yeah, do like Hawkinson and his upside.
Okay. And any other contrarian tight ends you want to throw out there, DK?
let's see. I mean, I'll mention Trey McBride. He's 3.3K. He's, playing a lot, running a lot of routes. He hasn't really had a big ceiling game yet, but the opportunities are there. I know I've mentioned a lot of guys there from Arizona, but I think McBride's at least interesting at 1%.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you with that game. It just seems like every player is at least interested. And there's kind of flaws to all of them, but also they're coming in relatively low owned in that game. Could be interesting if these quarterbacks are just competent, if they just play competently. So yeah, I kind of like the Trey McBride call. Alex, any other contrarian tight ends that you want to mention?
Let's see. No, I think we covered them all.
Okay, well, we'll move on. We'll talk some defenses and then our top GPP stacks. But first, let me tell you, make your best bets in 30 seconds or less with OddsShopper. With hundreds of bets featured daily, OddsShopper gives you the edge you need betting player props and game lines across all sports. With expected win percentages and ROIs included, OddsShopper features multiple projection methods, which will help you make the best bets available on the market. OddsShopper also features a parlay builder with optimized parlays and an arbitrage tool that identifies risk-free, guaranteed profit bets that you can make across sports books. What are you waiting for? Click the link in the video description below to sign up for free with OddsShopper and start making smarter bets now. All right, let's talk defenses just briefly. Alex, I won't even ask you the usual format. Just, do you have any thoughts on defenses this week?
Usually I like picking on some suspect offenses more than, especially if they're high owned, more than kind of playing for the quality of the players. So something like the Chargers could be interesting because I think people saw that Rams performance last week. So they may think the Rams are better than they actually are. So I kind of like that. And then going to like Detroit's defense versus Chicago is interesting because Chicago, I think Justin Fields will be somewhat popular, and you have a quarterback who, if they're down, he's going to throw some picks. So I see some potential there.
Yeah, for sure. And Justin Fields, at least early in the year, he was one of the most, I think he is maybe still the most sacked quarterback on the year. So that's another benefit to, no, Russell Wilson, it looks like, is the most sacked. Justin Fields number 2 in terms of sacks taken this year. So another added bonus, I guess, to playing the defense against Justin Fields. All right, DK, how about you? Any thoughts on defenses this week?
Yeah, so defense is usually a position I like to go for like a low round option. Like I will say, like I'm fine eating the chalk with the 49ers. It makes a ton of sense. Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. So totally fine if you want to go up there. Contrarian defense, the Texans, just because the Jags really don't have anything to play for this week. So it'd be interesting to see, like, do they play their main guys the full game? I could see them kind of taking it easy this game. So I know the Texans defense is not great, but if you get a situation where the Jags maybe play some of the backups more in the second half, I think it's at least a little bit sneaky.
That's a good point where you don't have to take any kind of major stand. You can just say, like, in general, I think they might not play all of their starters the whole game and take advantage of that with the opposing defense. That's one way to take advantage of some of that uncertainty. Definitely an interesting idea. All right, well, let's talk some top stacks. DK, I'll let you go first. Talking large field GPPs, any stacks that stand out to you? First places you're going this week.
Yeah, so I talk about the stack a lot, but I think the Kansas City stack, Mahomes, Kelsey stack is just because it's hard to make it work. But again, I love the ceiling on it. I think people will maybe stay away because the Chiefs are huge favorites. They might think, they're just going to run the ball a lot in the second half. But I think there's enough value to make it work. So a Mahomes, Kelsey, maybe Juju stack in there is just always something I like. Like I ran it against the 49ers. I want to say it was like a month ago. And they put up a big performance. So Mahomes basically matchup proof. And like the ceiling on Kelsey, like the ceiling on Juju. So it's a tough one to make it work, but I do like that Chiefs stack. Okay.
And then Alex, I'll throw it to you. Who's your favorite stack or stacks this week for a large field GPP?
It looks like it's pretty wide open. Like out of 100, the highest ranked stack on our top stacks is 68. So you got a lot of options here. All right. I think Detroit, they're kind of chalky, but they stand out as a really good option. The Chargers, they really pass a ton, and the Rams show they got some life in them, so I think that they could be an interesting stack. And then San Francisco, I just kind of think Brock Purdy is a really good value, so that's kind of interesting. And then if you want to go really contrarian on the Patriots, like if Devontae Parker this week misses, that really makes a lot of value in Jacoby Myers and Tyquan Thornton. And when I like the receivers, then pairing them up with the quarterback is always a good option.
I don't know if you mentioned him again here, but you mentioned Desmond Ridder earlier. How do you think you're going to make that stack work for Atlanta?
Well, I think, you want to play Ridder with Drake London, certainly. And then I think going to Tyler Algier as your second player in your stack makes a lot of sense, because with Caleb Huntley on the IR, Tyler Algier did get a kind of that more than 50% workload. So I think he doesn't catch a ton of passes, but I think if you're betting on the overall team performance, he'd be your second best option.
And do you think you would do a run back in those stacks from Arizona?
Not necessarily, because their best players are like pretty expensive. But if James Conner is out, that would really improve the value of Keontae Ingram, so he'd be a pretty reasonable run back.
Yeah, for sure. All right, DK, that's the end of the show. Thanks for coming on. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Twitter. It'll be DK__DFS. If you guys ever want some entertainment with tilting, I would be your guy. And then YouTube, it's just DK DFS. So really appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Great. Thanks for coming on. Alex, how about you? Any final words?
No, I think this one will be a fun one. It's the biggest slate we get all year, and a lot of big prizes. So I'd say don't overthink it. Like usually week 18 is the one that gets a little squirrely. Maybe there'll be one or two teams that look a little bit weird this week, but for the most part, I think it's a normal week. So don't get too fancy here.
Okay. And of course, if you're watching this show and you're on Twitter, you're probably already following Alex. But if you're not, at AwesomeODFS is where you can find him. Thanks for watching, guys. Again, please hit that like button if you haven't already. We've got NHL Strategy Show coming up next with Josh Harris and Michael Clifford. We've got the NFL No House Advantage Show with Terry McBride, NBA No House Advantage Show with EMAC later today. And then, of course, tonight we've got the NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock. So stick around the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Good luck this week.